Okay guys, so I'm going to start on page 70. But if you did not go watch that video on energy pyramids and food webs, please go back and watch it. That is a skill that you should have mastered in the 5th grade, something that I already expect you to know how to do. And I graded most of your papers from last week were on the back of that warm-up. You had to draw a food web, and a lot of you are not getting that right. Probably about 85% of you are not getting that correct, and it's imperative that you know how to do that. So please go back and watch that video. Stop this one right now and go back and watch the other one if you didn't watch it earlier. Again, it's super important. Otherwise, when I start talking about things, you're not going to have a clue what I'm talking about. All right, so again, when I start talking about page 70, I'm going to go back and forth from you looking at me to looking at my paper, so it's going to get a little bit weird going back and forth. Also, I've tried this about my 10th time to do this morning, and then every time my phone rings, my video stops, and I don't know how to make it not do that. So anyway, here we go again for me. Y'all's probably first time. Okay, so on page 70, I'm going to take my phone again, and I'm going to put it on my paper. Switching views, here we go. Okay, so one of the first things that I really need you guys to understand is at the bottom of your food web is always going to start with a producer. And a producer is always going to be something that photosynthesizes. So it could be grass, trees, shrubs, berries, any kind of plant. It could be phytoplankton that lives in the ocean, which is on this food web. It could be algae that's in fresh water. So a producer is always going to start at the bottom of your food web. A lot of you on that last one from last week on your warm-up were not putting the ryegrass at the bottom of your food web, and you were just starting with the consumer. Well, a consumer cannot function without eating a plant. Something always starts with a plant or something that photosynthesizes first before it can go up any further. So the other thing that I want y'all to be really careful with is a lot of you have your arrows going backwards when you were drawing your food webs last week. So remember in a food web that it is showing the direction that the energy is transferred. It is not showing what eats what. So for instance, this arrow is going from the squid to the shark because the shark is getting its energy from the squid when it eats the squid. But a lot of you had your arrows going backwards this direction. So if the arrow's going backwards this direction, that's saying that the squid got their energy from eating the shark, and that's just not true. So be very, very careful that your arrows are going in the right direction. If your arrows aren't going in the right direction, your whole food web is completely wrong. So that is super, super important that you understand, again, that this arrow shows the direction that energy is being transferred and not what eats what. The sea bass is getting its energy from the herring. The herring are not eating the sea bass. That is not what's happening. Okay, so your question asks you for a third order carnivore. So third order just means that it's different levels. So to understand the different levels, we have to go back and look at this food web in the form of an energy pyramid. So in an energy pyramid, just like if you watched in the other video, at the bottom, we're always going to start with a producer. So it could be plants, algae, plankton. It could even be phytoplankton. Okay, so always a producer. Then you have what we call first order or first level consumers. So these are going to be your primary consumers, which are your herbivores. So if you look over here, your primary consumers are going to be what is getting its energy from the producer, which in this case would be the copepods. Okay, so your first level consumer or your first order. This is going to be the second order. This is your third order, which is what your question is asking. Your question is asking you for a third order carnivore. So that just means 3 levels up the energy pyramid. And those levels are called trophic levels. So you'll have a producer, first, second, third level consumers. So sometimes it's called primary consumer, secondary consumer, and your tertiary consumer. So your primary consumers are normally going to be your herbivores. Secondary consumers are going to be usually omnivores that eat both plant and animal material. And then your carnivores are going to be your tertiary or your third level consumers, and they're going to be your predators. So it's asking you for a third level carnivore. So you're going to be 1, 2, 3. You should be right up here at the top of the food chain. So basically, it's asking you from looking at this diagram, what's 3 levels up from your producer. So this is going to be level 1. Whatever gets energy from this is going to be level 2. This would be level 3. And in this particular one, it goes all the way to level 4. But your question is asking you for a number 3. So be careful of that. All right, moving on to number 2. Number 2 is talking about a coastline, and it's talking about a marine ecosystem. So a marine ecosystem is going to mean in the ocean. So we're talking about an oceanic ecosystem. So it tells you that the population of humans has doubled, and it wants to know how that is going to impact the ocean. So as I go on in a few minutes, after I get finished with the video, I'll post these notes that are on my paper so that you can go through them individually. I want you to take a note that number 3 says accept. So you're looking for the answer on number 3 that is not correct. And this is about cell organelles, which we talked about last week. So go back and look from last week. And again, I have notes. You can either stop the video here or go look at the picture. I'll post a picture of my paper after I get finished with this video. Number 4 says farmers insert ladybugs to help with the aphid population in their gardens. So basically aphids eat the plants in a farmer's crops, and so they put ladybugs because ladybugs will eat the aphids. And it wants to know basically how that is changing the environment. It wants to know about environmental change. So when humans put a ladybug in their crops that wasn't there naturally, humans have changed the environment by adding the ladybugs. So that's going to help you on number 4. All right, and I'm going to turn the page to number 5. Number 5 is a dichotomous key, and I know this is not a very good drawing, but on this drawing right here, it basically is the body is divided into 2 regions. So the head, and it's hard to tell which is heads or tails of here, but the head region, which would be 1, and then the body, which would be 2. So when you go to your dichotomous key, you're going to go to 1A. Body is divided into 2 regions, and then it tells you go to 2. So I'm going to go to 2. So when I go to 2A and B, don't mind this orange right here. I did that on accident earlier, marking something out. I had a pen. I was marking it out. So 2A says it has more than 5 pairs of legs. 2B says it has 5 or fewer. So obviously this has more than 5 pair of legs, so I'm going to keep following, and it says go to 3. So I'm going to go to 3, go to step 3, which is here, 3A and B, and I'm just going to keep going until I can't go anymore, and that's going to be my answer. Number 6, I wanted to make sure that you understand some of these words. So answer choice A on number 6 is perspiring. Perspiring just means that you're sweating. B, slowing down your body's motion. Obviously, that just means that you are slowing down. If you're running, you're going to get a little bit slower, something like that if you've been running a while and you don't have good stamina. All right, on the following page, up at the top again is another food web. So remember that I told you that a food web always starts at the bottom with the producer. So we've got leaves, branches, and logs from a tree. So these in yellow right here, that get their energy, they're getting their energy from these trees, are going to be your first level consumers or your herbivores. Again, pay attention to your arrows. So the arrows must go this way. the millipede is getting its energy from the leaves, not the other way around. Your question asks you which organism is a top-level carnivore. So that means if it's a carnivore, it's not going to eat plants at all. It's not a herbivore, and it's not an omnivore. So basically it's asking you for a predator, a carnivore, which is at the top level when you were looking at an energy pyramid. We didn't talk about either, but if you look at the soil, fungus, and bacteria, if you will notice, almost every single one of these things in your pyramid has an arrow pointing to soil and bacteria. Well, the reason for that is everything eventually dies. And so remember, any organic matter that dies, bacteria and fungi are going to change those nutrients from those dead things, decompose them, and take them back to the soil. So because everything dies and eventually decomposes, then that's why so many of these arrows are going back to the soil and the bacteria, because when everything dies, it eventually decomposes and goes back. Now, soil and fungi are obviously not a carnivore. They're not a predator, so don't get that confused, but I did want to make that note. All right, on number 9, again, notice number 9 says except, so you're looking for the answer choice that is not true. Number 10 is giving you a graph to look at. It's population, and notice that it's 2 different populations. So number 10 tells you you've got 2 different species of paramecium. Paramecium are unicellular organisms. They're both made of only one cell. So 2 different species of these unicellular organisms. They're going to put in a petri dish, and they're going to watch what happens to the population of both of those. Now, these are unicellular organisms, so they are going to reproduce asexually. They are not reproducing with each other. These 2 species are not. Okay, they reproduce asexually on their own. So what you're looking at is the population of these 2 things. So remember when we were looking at graphs that look like this about the lynx? We watched a video on the lynx and the snowshoe hare. And we also talked about graphs that look like this when we were talking about producers or consumers and that ate each other in Yellowstone. So remember, you'll have one population that goes up, and because their population is high, then whatever it feeds on, their population will go up. And then as the population that's feeding goes up, then you're not going to have as many as that first organism, and their population is going to go down. Well, when their population goes down, then this second species isn't going to have enough to eat, and their population is going to go down. So it starts this kind of a up and down, it's a natural kind of ebb and flow that goes on between 2 species when one is a predator of the other. And it goes up and down naturally. It's perfectly natural to have that happen in an ecosystem. All right, what else? Number 11, it asks you about your hair standing on end when you get scared, and it's talking about your adrenal glands. So to answer this question, you have to know which one of your body systems regulates hormones. And if you don't remember, go back and look from last week's notes that I posted. All right, last page, number 12. We didn't really talk about biomass very much. You should have studied biomass when you were in the 5th grade. So biomass is pretty much anything that's living or used to be living. Remember, bio means life. Biomass is plant or animal material that can be used for fuel. So we burn logs for fuel, for fire. If you burn anything, basically if you burn any kind of grass or anything, that's fuel. Our fuels such as oil, remember, are decomposing matter from dead plants and animals over billions of years that are down in the soil. So remember that a biomass is going to be any plant or material that can be used for fuel. So let's know at which level in the food web is there the most biomass. Well, think about things that you would burn for fuel. Plants or animals? Which one of those is going to have more mass? Which one of those is going to be more efficient to burn from? All right, number 13 is asking you how the circulatory system works with your immune system. So remember that the circulatory system circulates things through your body, through your bloodstream, and that your immune system is going to fight germs and disease. All right, last one, number 14 is talking about tropisms. We talked about tropisms at the beginning of the school year. So a tropism is a growth either toward or away from a stimulus. Remember, we can have a positive tropism or a negative tropism. So when leaves grow toward the sun, that's a positive tropism. It's a phototropism. When roots grow toward gravity, that's geotropism. We talked about that. When vines grow to what they're touching, it's stigmatropism. So a tropism is just growth toward or away from a stimulus. And it wants to know their functions are to allow the plant to do what? So what do tropisms allow a plant to do? All right, guys. Well, end of the series of videos for this week. And I'll see you next week.